It is Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. This is another edition of Baseball Today. See Rose, see you later. I'm your host, Trevor Plouffe. You guys know who this is. Podcast only, you might not know because I haven't said it yet, but on YouTube, my guy Justin Morneau, 2006 MVP, almost 250 homers in the show, almost 1,000 RBIs in the show. I didn't even know you had an MVP too as well. A lot of accolades.
You're just looking at it. 2008, actually, I wouldn't say more proud, but I thought the 2008 was a better year is the right year, but there was, RBIs mattered when we played, or at least people talked about them. It was a focus.
130 in 2006 and 129 in 2008. That was the year you played 163 games, which I think is one of the more impressive things you can have on a baseball reference page is when you see the bold in the games. Usually it's 162, but you guys had 2 straight years of game 163s. 2008 was against the White Sox. That was the Jim Thome homer, right?
Yeah, off Nick Blackburn.
974
feet.
974 feet. You heard it here first. And then 2009, you guys with the Alexi Casilla with the walk-off against the Tigers. So welcome to the show.
Thanks. A little trip down memory lane.
A legend. I forgot about the MVP too. I don't know how that happened, but it's very, very nice to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to get into it. First, what we like to do is what we call a tip of the cap, where we kind of just highlight some guys. We don't really talk about them. Just these are things that almost made the show but didn't. Encarnacion Strand, he former Twin prospect. You know him. He has a pinch hit homer for his first big league hit in a crazy game out there in Cincinnati. So tip of the cap to him. And then also fellow Canadian Joey Votto hits homer number 350. You got any quick Votto stories or takes, man?
So I was playing with Votto in the World Baseball Classic. This is going to make me sound arrogant to start off this podcast, but I'll do it anyway.
Okay.
So we're sitting there taking ground balls, and ball takes a funny hop, kind of comes up on me, sort of side dodge it. I look at him, I go, I can't afford to get any uglier. And he looks at me dead straight face and looks and goes, yeah, you can. You're rich. And then just goes back to taking his ground ball, doesn't crack a smile, nothing. And I'm looking at it. I kind of put me back a little bit, and I'm like, oh, he was joking. He was like, his sense of humor, he's just so dry. And I was like, all right, I get this guy. This guy's funny.
I like it.
He was, he's obviously one of the best hitters of all time. So
I had to remind you yesterday on the broadcast that we did with the Twins that you're rich. So a lot of people are reminding you that as of late. But let's get into it. Yep. We got 5 questions here. That's how we do the show. First one we're going to get to, the Giants. They extended their win streak to 7 with a sweep of the doubleheader versus Cincinnati, who we just talked about. They moved within 1.5 games of the Dodgers. A lot of people are talking about them, making that big splash at the deadline. So you've been on a bunch of teams that are in their position where, you need to go a little bit to secure either a division win or a wild card win. What's like the vibe when it's let's go get guys versus the, hey, we have everything we need in the clubhouse already. Let's just go with the guys we have here. Where were you at when you were in those situations?
Well, I think anytime you're on a team that's trying to track down a playoff spot, every team has needs or faults or weaknesses or however you want to look at it. And then the rumor mill starts. And I think it's obviously more now with all the social media. When we were playing, it was in the paper, a reporter asked you about it or whatever. There wasn't a whole lot. Now it's somebody throws a rumor out there, and then somewhere it gains traction, and all of a sudden it filters back to the clubhouse, and you go. There was times, we were rumored to be getting Alfonso Soriano, and it was like, oh, imagine that guy in the middle of our lineup, right-handed bat and power and whatever, and then it doesn't happen, and it's a big letdown. So we kind of you learn as you go along, and try not to pay too much attention to it. But when it's a name like that, or we're Cliff Lee, that was another one that we thought we were going to get. We thought we were close on that one, and he didn't end up, getting traded to our team. And it was like, So you're sitting there and you're going, oh, man, we could really use an upgrade here. We could really use another arm in the bullpen, maybe another starter, whatever it is, to help us match up. But if you get caught up in that, it can be a huge letdown at the deadline if you don't make any moves. So we've been on both sides of it, where we added Shannon Stewart, one of my first years in the league, and he had an unreal second half and kind of propelled the team. I've been traded myself at the deadline. So I think it's a good thing to be able to look at it in a positive way of like, hey, we got this guy, but that's more up to the GMs. And then you see it happen and you make trades, and then a guy like Encarnacion Strand gets traded by the Twins trying to add to their team, trying to make the playoffs, and now he's in the big leagues, hits a homer, and you look at it and it's kind of out of your control, it's out of your hand. But when you're in the middle of it as a player, you want to add as many guys as you can, because you never know how many chances you're going to get to make the playoffs. You never know how many chances you're going to, have to make a run. So I think that's where you look at it and you go, if we can get better, hopefully they find a way to help us get better.
I guess I never really thought about that aspect of it, where it's, if you do get your expectations up and then nothing happens, it can kind of be a drag on the team. I guess like how I mentioned it, or how I phrased the question in that aspect, if you don't bring anybody in and you have that initial sense of a letdown, I guess, is there any part of you in the clubhouse that's like, you know what? Awesome. Like, this is us. We've been doing it all season long anyway. And is that like a rallying point for teams that don't necessarily go out and make those big splashes?
I'm going to say this now because I'm not as worried about it as I was as a player, but sometimes you have to take that mentality. The initial letdown happens, the deadline ends, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is what we got. And I think Gardy did a good job. Ron Gardenhire did a good job of addressing that as well, of like, hey boys, this is what we got. We're going to make a run with this group right here. And he did a really good job as the skipper to just refocus us on what's important and who we have. And it's like, this is what we got, and this is how it's going to be going forward. And we got to find a way to get it done with whoever's in the room right now. And I think that was kind of the way to shift your mindset from, hey, we're getting one of the best players in the game. We're getting one of the best hitters in the game. And now we're not getting anybody. And it was almost like an us against them mentality of they don't want to help this team, or you can look at it as like they don't think we're good enough to sacrifice the future.
Oh, you're talking about with like the front office.
Yeah. There's like that mentality of like, either these guys don't think we're capable of making a run, or they don't think it's worth giving up this guy an A-ball for us to be better today. And as a player, like I said, when you're in the middle of it, all you want to do is win today. And you don't want to look at it as 3 years from now, this guy's going to be in the back end of our rotation. It's like, we're like, who cares?
Yeah.
Next year's not guaranteed that we're going to have the same success. We're not going to be in first place in the middle of July. So you don't care what 2 years from now looks like. And I think that's the job of the front office, is to look at what 2 years is going to look like and what 5 years is going to look like. So I think it's a balance, but at some point the mentality does shift of, this is who we have and let's win with this group.
A lot of fans are going to clip that of you saying, next year's not promised, let's go for this year, and they're going to send it to their front office. So that was awesome. Let's move on. Last night we were part of one of these games, but there were 12 teams that scored 10 or more runs last night, which is the most in a single day, dating back to freaking 1900s. Whenever we get to talking about those numbers, it's something special has happened. Which offensive explosion was the most impressive to you last night?
I mean, we got to see it firsthand. I liked our game. We got to see some young kids having big days, hitting home runs. And I don't know, the Reds game was impressive. The fact that a kid hit a go-ahead home run for his first major league home run into the second deck. I mean,
you can talk about our Braves. Okay.
The Braves is, they've been doing it all year. It's nothing new. I mean, they've been hitting over 300 as a group for month and a half.
We're gonna get to the Braves in a little bit, so don't go too far into.
Yeah, I think our game was impressive. Just the fact that it wasn't the guys that you expected on opening day to carry your offense. I think that's why.
In the Twins game, it was Eddie Julian doing his thing. He's been a real spark plug for the Twins offense after the break. Alex Kirilloff, a guy that you and I really think can be an impact bat in the big leagues. And then at the end of the game, some of the old salty dogs got involved. Correa said, I wanted to hit one. Farmer said, I wanted to hit one. So the Twins offense has been really impressive. I'm going to go with the D-backs, being able to keep up with that vaunted Braves offense. You got a guy like Christian Walker there playing first base who's, yeah, he's underrated. The ability to drive the ball there and to just put up right now, where are his stats up? He's hitting 262 with the 848 OPS. He had 5 ribbies last night. And if you look at the top of that lineup, I love when the top of the lineup goes because, that's why you put them up there. They're supposed to be the guys. And when your good guys are going off, I think it just makes everything easier. So Perdomo, who's been really good all year, Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll, we know about him. We'll talk a little bit more about him later. And Walker, those guys all went off, answered. They put up 2 in the first. And then Atlanta puts up 5 in the first, and it's like, okay, here we go again. But that's what the Snakes have been able to do all year long. I don't think people give their offense enough credit for just how good it is. And, again, to go in and do it against a guy like Bryce Elder, who's been really good. And you know who else they scored against? Michael Tonkin.
Coop's
brother-in-law. Yeah, he's actually been pretty good for the Braves this year, but in this game he gave up some runs. So I think that was really impressive. But again, just a crazy offensive night around the league. Man, it's fun. The game that we did last night was really fun, just because it was every single inning the Twins had runners in scoring position, ready to go, and a lot of times they cashed them in. That's always fun.
This episode of Baseball Today is brought to you by Miracle Made. We're talking sheets here, people. Did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? Well, that's why, inspired by NASA, Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics. It allows for that temperature regulation. And not only that, the silver in the sheets can help prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth. What does that bacteria do? Well, it can clog your pores, and nobody wants that. So go to trymiracle.com/today. If you go there right now, you can save over 40%. If you use our promo today at checkout, you'll also get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. This is a banger of a deal, people. Go do that. And Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. That's amazing. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/today and use the code TODAY to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/today to treat yourself. Thank you to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode.
Speaking of the Braves, moving on. They lost 3 straight for the first time since May 14th. They lost 4 of the last 5. I don't really care about that. I think they're fine. But I'm going to ask you this. Do you consider them the most complete team in baseball? And if not, who do you think is?
That's a good question. I think without Houston's injuries, I mean, coming off what they did last year and just kind of how they are as a group, but they do have injuries, and I think Atlanta's had some injuries, but they have right now the best player in the National League. So I think it's hard to argue that they're not the best team, most complete team. I think you need obviously starting pitching. They have high-end starting pitching. You need a good bullpen. They have that. They have an offense that can score runs with anyone, and they can score in different ways. They're not just sit back and wait for the 3-run homer. They have Acuna who can run. They have different weapons, different ways to beat you, and I think that's what makes them so good is they can beat you 2-1 or they can beat you 11-10. And I think that's a sign of a pretty good team where if you need an ace to go out there and be a stopper and punch out 10 and pitch into the 7th and shut any team down, they have that. And I think they're as good as anyone. I think the Rangers people are still wondering what that's going to look like moving forward. I mean, they do a lot of things well, but I don't think anyone does everything well as the Braves do.
I'd agree. I still have the Braves, I think, as my most complete team. If they are able to get some of the starters back off the IL, that'll kind of fortify their rotation as they get towards the playoffs. I think that'll be obviously great for them. And they're also not a team that stands pat at the trade deadline. Like Alex Anthopoulos is always making moves, and he seems like he pulls the right strings from time to time. We just talked about it on my show, Talking Baseball. The year they won the World Series in 2021, they just got a whole new outfield. A bunch of guys who were kind of underperforming. They weren't like going off, but they brought him in, and that was like one of the main reasons. And if you remember, at 2021, the bullpen was like everyone was like, they don't have the bullpen to do it. Their bullpen was like the best in the playoffs. Yeah. So sometimes things like that happen. I will say the Rangers are closer than I think a lot of people think. Right now, they have the best offense in the league. I mean, by a lot of measures. And we're talking right here, OBP, they're second in OPS, they're first in runs scored, which, hey guys, that's probably the number one stat you want to lead in, right? Runs scored. Runs per game, I think people have said is probably better, but overall runs scored being number one is a good thing. You know, their starting pitching has been really good. They just traded for Aroldis Chapman. I think they're probably going to add more in the bullpen.
They've pushed their chips in. I mean, they've made huge investments.
And they haven't even had Jacob deGrom.
Yeah.
Like, imagine. So, yeah, they're there. I think this is one wild card team I'm going to say. And people are not going to like this. But this is what I believe, man. I think the Blue Jays are right there, too. I like everything that they can do. I don't think they've hit their stride yet. A couple key additions here and there, bullpen related, I think. But you could say that about a lot of teams. I think the Blue Jays have the potential to be one of the more complete rosters in the big leagues. That's just me.
I think I'm with you there. They're probably another starting pitcher away with Manoah, and
he got to figure it out.
To him last night, I think he's a guy who had Cy Young votes, but has really fallen off. So I think they're a little bit. They do have a couple of high end starters, a couple of guys who can win you game one in the playoffs, and Romano at the back end and getting the ball to him.
Yeah.
So every team has faults. You can pick apart any team in the league. You can look and go, well, they need to fix this or they need to do that better. It's hard to do that with Atlanta. I think it's hard to find a true weakness in their roster.
You know who we didn't mention? The Dodgers.
Or Tampa.
Or Baltimore. And there's a lot of really, really good teams out there. I think that's what's going to be really interesting to see is, you know, which of these top-end teams, what do they add? You know, like there's a lot of good pieces to be had at the trade deadline. And if one of those teams adds, it's like, man, it really seems like on paper some teams are just going to start to really separate themselves. But again, you know, that's baseball and doesn't always happen that way.
I think it's hard because how do you pick when, you know, you go through this rebuild and you stack prospects and like Baltimore and Cincinnati have done? At what point do you take those prospects and turn them into big leaguers again? Or do you just continue to wait and do what Tampa does and just continue to pull from the system and trade established guys for more young guys and just continue to do it that way? I think Tampa's blueprint works in Tampa, and they found a way to make it work for them. I think trying to copy what they're doing doesn't work in every market.
No, it doesn't.
Right? I think it's a way that they operate, that they bring guys in, they put them in spots to succeed, and they're not locked into any one spot in a bullpen or in a rotation or in a lineup. I mean, there's very few pieces they have that just, okay, pencil them in. You look at Atlanta's lineup. 1, 2, it's pretty predictable who's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what I mean? Tampa doesn't do that.
No.
So it's just a different way of operating. But I think at what point does Baltimore go, we have 3 high-end shortstop prospects in Jackson Hall, and you know, you have the best prospect in the game. At what point do you deal from that strength? Or do you just say we want as many athletes as we can moving forward? And it's hard to – I think that's the most challenging thing for a front office is looking at it and going, we've got back to this point where we're starting to win. Now let's supplement this group and then subtract from what we've actually been building to this point. And I think it's hard to just figure out when that is. Baltimore, to me, looks like they're closer than Cincinnati does at this point. Cincinnati's exciting, but I don't think they're kind of at that same spot that Baltimore's in. But Baltimore's right there knocking on the door with those top teams.
I agree. I think that you have to make the decision at some point. Both of the windows are going to be long for those teams because of the prospects that they have. And, you know, when you have guys come up and have success that are young, they don't cost anything. So now your payroll's low and you can add and do all those things. I agree. Like both Baltimore and the Reds have a similar problem where the Reds are bringing up guys and just having to find places for them to play. Like they move Ellie off of shortstop. He goes to third base because McLean is doing his thing at shortstop. Strand, I think, has been playing third base. And like now where are you going to put him? You have Jonathan India there, who's been like the heart and soul of your team. He's kind of can only play second base. You know, maybe you move him to the outfield, I guess.
Now you find out bats for Votto while you're doing it.
It's a lot of things. It's, you know, it's, I guess to answer your question, in my mind, when you start to have those logjam problems, that's the time.
Yeah.
So
because younger players never have more value than before they've actually done anything in the big leagues. Before you find out, oh, this guy maybe.
Or they for the first initial success in the big leagues that a lot of guys have because you have that extra adrenaline and like you're just so laser focused as a young kid because you just don't want to mess up. So it's like a lot of guys can come up and have like really nice initial success.
Well, the league adjusts.
And then the league adjusts. But before the league adjusts,
Yeah.
you're like, hey, look at this shiny object I have right here.
Give me your number one starter, and we'll figure it out.
All right, moving on. More trade deadline stuff. Dylan Cease, according to John Heyman, take that for what you will, is allegedly the Astros' dream acquisition at the deadline. I think that's a quote from him. We're going to talk Twins here a little bit because both you and I obviously are close to the situation. What is one deal that you think makes like a lot of sense for the Twins before the deadline?
That's tough because that makes sense, but you're not going to trade within division, or very rarely do you see trades within the division.
Oh, Dylan Cease makes sense. Okay.
I mean, if any team can add a number one starter, you're going to add a number one starter.
Mhm.
And it makes you instantly better, whether if you have one or not. I mean, how do you win in the playoffs? We saw Washington. How do you win in the playoffs? High-end guys, and then the rotation gets shortened as you get to the postseason with all the days off. So you can never have too many aces. You can never have too many good starting pitchers.
But do you think that's the main focus of the Twins, or the main need on this roster of the Twins right now would be another starter? Or are you thinking
No, I think
bullpen, bat? What
I think this is hard because Correa's been hitting better recently, right? If Buxton can get back to even close to what's expected, you need a right-handed bat because they haven't hit lefties very well. You need a right-handed power bat. You need someone that you just take and go, here, this guy's going to hit third or fourth against lefties, and he's going to be a threat, and he's going to get, he's going to have some big at-bats. And who that is, I'm not exactly sure, who to target and who's available. That's a long list, but I think that where they've struggled this year more than anything has been against left-handed pitching, but it's been more the guys that you expected to hit them. It's been more Buxton and Correa struggling and not carrying the load. And Twins love to platoon. They love to, mix and match the lineup and try and get the matchups they want. But I think the lefties that's been really a challenge. And if they're going to win the division, they're going to need to add somewhere in the lineup. It's been better lately, but I think there is some room for improvement there.
So Falvey, he's been on record as saying that he thinks most of the offensive contributions that they need to have in the second half are going to come from within. So take that for what it's worth, because a lot of times these GMs they say things to set up leverage and all that. For me, I think the Twins would benefit from that, no doubt. But I do kind of agree with Falvey where it's like, if Carlos continues to do what he does, and then Buck can kind of turn things around and get healthy, not get healthy, but like find a healthy stroke in the second half, that kind of takes care of that need.
Yeah.
So I'm more of like a bullpen guy. Like, I think like doesn't matter. We know the Twins have some really good high leverage options in the back end, but I think you can never have enough high leverage options in the back end. So and for whatever reason, those guys are made available quite often at the trade deadline. I think a lot of what happens with the relievers, in my opinion, is you have this store of value for a year. Such a volatile position. But when you're hot as a reliever, you can net like some high-end prospects because teams are like, okay, we really need that. Like, high leverage really means something, especially in a contending team in the playoffs. So teams are actually willing to give up more for something that probably doesn't have as much value long-term, but it's just that short-term fix. Teams are willing to give up a lot for that.
Well, I mean, perfect example of that's Jorge Lopez.
Yeah.
All-star closer last year, Baltimore. Baltimore sells him in the middle of but trades him in the middle of a hot streak, and then struggled a little bit with the Twins. He struggled, and I'm with you. The ability to shorten games, to go, okay, you got Duran at the back end. Guy throws 103. He's got as good arm as anybody in the game, and then work backwards from there. And it's like, yeah, if you have three of those, and I think you need three guys that are power plus arms that have closer type stuff like we see here. We're in Seattle, but the back end of their bullpen from the sixth inning on, they had the lead, and they were bringing in guys that would be closing for most teams, throwing 99 with sliders 91 and just dominant power stuff. When you have a lead, you have to be able to win those games. And when you have a lead and your starter gives you 6 innings, as the Twin starters have been doing very consistently all year, then all of a sudden you go, because there's nothing more demoralizing, than losing a lead late. You battle your way through, you're up 1 or 2 in the late innings, and then all of a sudden you give it up, and then you're forced to come back again. And I think it eats at you as a team. So if you can shorten the game and you can bring in more guys, I think obviously every team would love to do that.
It's going to be
who that guy is, I don't know. But
I know the Mariners, man. This is we're not going to get into it right now, but they're such an interesting team to me because you can see the pitching. That's apparent. Everyone knows that. And offensively, it just kind of feels like it's a matter of time. Like they haven't really done. It's almost it mirrors what the Twins have gone through with Julio Rodriguez not really. And I don't know how fair it is to have they give him such lofty expectations to a young kid. And he's having a down year by his standards, but
Well, see, I look at it.
he hasn't really hit his
He's learning.
He's learning, yeah. So
The league knows him. It's very hard to make an adjustment at his age. You're facing guys that have 10 years of experience, and they can exploit the weaknesses. And as a young player, a young hitter, you're still facing guys for the first time. You're still learning, and I think that's you need to surround him with some guys that can take the pressure off. It's a very similar situation the Twins have. You're right.
All right, last question. We always like to end with a fun one, okay? And Corbin Carroll, I don't know if you saw, he takes third base on a drop third strike. Dan's going to run the video right here. Look at this. This guy is just a menace, dude. Like, how does this even happen? Because he's fast. Not only just one base after an errant throw, he's like, dude, there's no chance I'm stopping. I mean, he's such a dynamic player, and the speed plays into it. He's also got a ton of pop. I talk to Longoria about him all the time, and he's just so impressed with him. So, anyways, watching this guy run is just super impressive. My question to you, because last night on the air we talked about our speed, our sprint speed percentile, and in 2016 they had yours. I think you were like 26th percentile, and I was like 33rd. So pretty close.
I was old.
You were old, and I mean, I wasn't
Oldish.
I was old-ish, right? Okay. Right now, between you and I, who wins in a race around the bases?
I've never been faster than you. There's no delusion in my mind.
Okay.
I didn't even know. I saw this question. You sent me this last night, and you told me this question was coming. I was like, this is going to be kind of a boring answer because I know that I'm not fast.
That's great.
And I know that you're faster than me. And I haven't been fast since I was 6. Last time I was fast.
Well, that was the next time. That was the next question I was going to ask you because I didn't expect you to give that answer. I thought you were going to combat me a little bit.
No.
Or say like I got more pop than you though, which is true.
Actually, I almost did say that.
Okay. Well, I know you. It's okay. Clearly, people, I would win in this race right here. I'm not exactly the fleetest of foot, but that's fine.
I thought the better question would be: would Corbin Carroll go home to first faster than it would take me to go from first to home? Or home to home, Corbin Carroll going all the way around. I start at first base.
Oh, do you think he would get past you? Oh my gosh, he probably would. He's so fucking fast, dude. But the follow-up question, I think you just answered it. When was the last time you actually felt fast, or someone told you were fast? You said 6.
6. Yeah, I played on my older brother's team, the 8 and 9-year-old team, when I was 6.
They're like, that guy's fast. He's gonna be a burner.
Lead off hitter, lay down bunt, and go to first base, yeah. And then I, did the old race, first grade, little elementary school races, and then tried to do it the next year, and I got slow between, first grade and second grade. It was a tough
tough transition for Morney. When I was a senior in high school, like when I got drafted, that was considered a tool of mine, my speed. Like I was humming down the first baseline, just digging in there. And then I gained 20 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, my dad liked to say that either I ran with a piano on my back or they tied me to first with a sundial. So there you go. Thanks, Dad.
Okay, so I guess this question didn't get us anywhere. We're both slow. But you know what, Chris Rose? If you're watching, we both freaking run laps around you, bro. Get out of here with that.
I agree with that.
Anyways, that's all we got for today. I really appreciate you coming on. I think you offer great insight. Anyone that watches the Twins games, you hear Morney all the time. He's great at what he does. And not only that, around the clubhouse, giving good advice. This is my mentor right here. So it's special to do this show with you. So thank you.
No, thanks for having me. Sorry I made you wait.
It's okay. For C. Rosie, for our producer Dan, and for Justin Morneau, I am Trevor Plouffe. We'll catch you next time on Baseball Today.